Welcome to the Secure Connections podcast brought to you by ae90a, the Internet of Things Security Services Association. I'm Brian Sherman, Content Director for ae90a and host of our weekly channel cybersecurity discussion. My special guest on today's episode is Greg Edwards, CEO of CryptoStopper. I'm excited we'll be digging into one of the biggest cybersecurity concerns for businesses and MSPs today, the rising threats associated with ransomware, and some tips on things that you can do within your business. Welcome to the Secure Connections podcast, Greg.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Well, great. Well, thanks for joining us. Looking forward to a fun discussion. Ransomware, I know, is a hot topic. No matter where you go, whether you're hanging out with the guys or actually in the tech community, everybody seems to know what it is today. So I'm looking forward to getting some lowdown from somebody.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, why don't we start with a little about yourself? Your first time guest here. So we want to learn a little about Greg. What did you want to be when you grew up?
So I actually wanted to be a chiropractor, I thought. That was I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And that seemed like the best route to owning my own business. And after I dropped out of college, that didn't work out, but I still became an entrepreneur anyway.
So why a chiropractor? Is it somebody in the family or?
Actually, just the local chiropractor that I went to I grew up in a little town called Traer in Iowa, and had a great chiropractor there, and he was a good guy and just seemed like something I was interested in, but yeah, it didn't last long. once I was actually in college. So.
Gotcha. Been going to the same chiropractor for 30 years, so yeah, I'm a believer. So yeah, no, that's an interesting twist. I don't get that one very often for
Right.
IT. So that asked me the question of how did you get into cybersecurity?
Yeah, so I actually always was a geek. I actually helped my school when I was in 5th grade to implement a computer lab. This would have been back in the mid 80s. So I was the student liaison. We had an Apple IIe at home. And so I was the resident expert as a 5th grader. So that's how I started out in technology, and then worked in a software company for a little bit after I had to get a job after I dropped out of college, and then started my own network consulting and MSP business when I was 24.
Very good. No, I'm only laughing because that was our high school computer lab. Was the So we're close in age. We're just at a different school level. That was it. But
well, and we had one of the very first computer labs in an elementary in the country, which was pretty cool for the little bitty town that I grew up in.
Yeah, some schools still don't have computer labs.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Felt lucky. We've grown up. The small districts we've lived in had always had those as long as my kids were in school too. So
yeah,
for granted. Well, great. Now I know from talking to you previously, CryptoStopper isn't your first experience as an entrepreneur. I think you kind of alluded to it, but tell us about your first business.
Yeah. So, well, if you want to go all the way back to the first business I started,
let's go all the way back.
The way back, I started a auto detailing business when I was 12, and recruited my friends to do the hard work. Nice. But the first real business that I started is actually an MSP that I still own today called Watchpoint IT. I started that in 1998, right before Y2K. And I mean, it was perfect time. I had no idea what I was doing as an entrepreneur. And I look at that first business as my MBA program. So started that in 98. And then I started out of that, I started an offsite backup and disaster recovery company called Access Backup, and ended up selling the offsite backup and disaster recovery company. Made sense when Datto came into the market and had way better technology. Made sense to sell quick before we lost market share. So and part of the reason that I sold Axis Backup was because I was seeing the rise of ransomware. I mean, I've seen these ransomware attacks happening since 2012 was the first that I saw, and a $40 ransom at that time.
Bargain now.
Yeah. There's no such thing as a $40 ransom anymore. Maybe 40,000 on a low end. But yeah, so those were the first two businesses. I've had a few other. Actually owned a cattle ranch on 600 acres. So I've done a few things outside of technology, but the successful ones have been technology related. And now with CryptoStopper, we're really growing leaps and bounds there.
Yeah, very good. So CryptoStopper came out of your experience as an MSP and then in the backup side as well. Was that a natural transition?
Natural in that, yes, it was an absolutely needed solution, but it was the first time that I built and owned a company that we built the software from the ground up. So that was a bit of a learning curve, and took us some time to get the first. I mean, we started out the very first version that we built for the MSP, and then for the offsite backup clients actually was a PowerShell script. So as you can imagine, turning a PowerShell script into a fully functional application with a portal, and that was we thought, oh, no problem, couple months we can develop that. It was a little more difficult.
I was going to say it was probably more than a couple of months, but you know, that's I've been in the channel for going on 2 decades now, and I remember back, even in the early 2000s, there were a lot of MSP businesses being fostered. When I say MSP businesses, I mean software businesses coming from MSPs and VARs and IT service based on the needs that they saw for their own clients. So I think it's always an interesting tale. But it sounds like it was something that came from your specific client base, that there was a need that you're trying to solve. Is that correct?
Yeah. And really, I mean, so that was the same case with the offsite backup and disaster recovery. I mean, we were doing offsite backup manually way back in 2002. And then by 2007 had automated that, and we're doing automated offsite backups, and then had a data center, and really had cloud backup before the cloud existed, and grew that. And that really was all out of the MSP, because I saw that need to have that ability to be able to recover. I mean, everybody hopefully at least backs up, but very few people actually to this day test it. And I found very early on that was the key to having successful backups, was to actually test them, which was a novel idea. But we would actually, back in 2002, we would actually do tests where we would bring the client's systems live in our office environment. And then that morphed into cloud backup and being able to bring them live in the cloud. And so yeah, I mean, I think it's natural to have software companies and services that develop out of an MSP, because we're so close to that need and see what's happening on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Now, you always saw that term is, for the channel, built by the channel. That's,
yep.
I think that still has credibility today.
Yep, absolutely.
You're solving an issue. You're not putting a square peg in a round hole. You're
right.
trying to align it with the right business needs. So,
right.
So let me take a step back too, because you alluded to a couple things. What are the origins of ransomware? Can you give us a little history of where did you first come across it? Where is it started really affecting businesses?
Yeah, so really CryptoLocker was the first big ransomware. There actually was a variant of ransomware that was spread via 3.5-inch floppies. way, I believe in 98 was the first, maybe even before that. I don't remember the exact year, but there was a ransomware that was spread via floppy disk. But the real,
at least it wasn't the 5-inch,
Right. Right. But the real first ransomware attacks that I saw were CryptoLocker, and then variants from there, starting around the 2012 timeframe. And really, if you look at why ransomware is what it is today, it's all because of cryptocurrency. I mean, don't want to draw the parallel that it's that it's the only thing that cryptocurrency was for, because it's for lots of other things, and I think has lots of potential good. But definitely ransomware grew out of the ability of these attackers to be able to get paid completely anonymously.
Yeah, it gives them a get out of jail free card. It's more anonymous, right? Than,
Yep.
if you had to send them in gift cards for Best Buy or Circus City, would probably be a lot. Yeah.
Right. Be more difficult. Yeah. And to pay, I mean, the typical ransoms that we're seeing today start in the 60,000 range up to millions. And actually the average is a little over 300,000 is the average ransom paid today. And these guys are making millions and millions of dollars. And the thing that's enabled that is the ability to get paid completely anonymously and not through Best Buy gift cards.
Now, I know one of the things you said, the average is 300,000. There's obviously businesses that can't afford that, but I've seen cases where it seems like they know how much each business would be able to afford. Is there a component of that to ransomware?
There is. So they actually will research their successful attacks, and so that they know, what kind of industry it is. They'll find out if they have cyber liability insurance, because that will up the amounts that can be paid. And they almost all of the ransomware attacks now, they will negotiate with the victim.
Yeah, it's talk about business now. Yeah, we got a research arm, you've got a negotiation arm.
I mean, they are full on businesses. And there's also ransomware as a service, which basically is software as a service, but with ransomware. And so you've got the company that, and I call it company, I should call it organized criminals behind it, that create it and then just sell it as a service. And then the attackers that are using it really don't have to have much technical knowledge to be able to perpetrate the ransomware crimes.
Right, that makes sense. Because now there's a number of variants too with ransomware. I know it's not one size fits all. What are some of the attacks that MSP should be aware of today? Some have kind of come and gone, but now there's new variants of old ones, and it's a mix.
There's so many variants. We maintain a list on our site, and are over 1,200 unique variants of ransomware. But some of the most common Ryuk that's out there right now. That's a very common one. And then it's continuously changing, and the thing that they will do is change up their tactics and continuously change. It's not, so it really doesn't matter what the variant is, it's how you get it, because they ultimately, they'll be changing their whether it's an executable or whether it's what we call a live off the land fileless attack. They're changing that constantly, so AV doesn't catch it. And that's one of the reasons that ransomware has been so successful. And when you think about it in the way that we have managed not ransomware attacks, but just malware attacks previously, previous to ransomware, it really, you got a malware attack, it wasn't that big of a deal. You re-image the machine and move on. And some would always slip through, right? Well, now those some that slip through cause so much damage that that's no longer acceptable, that some slip through.
Right. Yeah, the tactics, when you look at email messages, they're transforming so fast. I know you mentioned AV is, it's looking for known entities, and those known entities are changing
nonstop.
Probably hourly or at least daily.
Well, I've seen a stat on it. I think that it was every 3.8 or every 0.3 seconds, there's a new iteration. And that's not, not each purveyor changing it that quickly, but across the board. So yeah, when you look at it in that context, that they're changing it more than every minute, how would you ever keep up?
They're bringing the game. Yeah, definitely. It's changed from,
Yeah.
and I think that's the scary part for people now. Now, in the past, you alluded to too, is some companies are still relying on backups to protect their data in case they get hit with a ransomware attack. I'm assuming that's not the best defense anymore.
Yeah. So, I mean, absolutely got to have backup,
Right.
and you've got to be able to recover all else fails. But I mean, the thing about, and I have expertise in recovering from disasters. So just the having to go to that backup and go through the recovery process or is, I mean, it's just a huge waste of time. I mean, your minimum of 2 hours recovery, and more likely 2 days of recovery. If your clients have a full-on attack, I mean, if you have the best backup solution out there and can recover them in less than 2 hours, you're doing awesome. And more likely it's going to be somewhere in the 6 to 8 hour up to a couple of days to get back up and running. So it's just too long for something that's so prevalent.
Oh, that makes sense. And I know I'm hearing some of the newer ones. We've got, I'm trying to think, double ransom.
Double, I mean, double Paymar. I mean, there's so many out there that if we tried to keep up with every single new one, I keep up on the most common, and Ryuk being the one that sticks out to me right now. But I mean, it's just constantly changing.
So they're not just ransoming and then giving you back the data, but you're not even assured today that if they give it back to you, they're not going to use it for some other nefarious purposes, correct?
Well, so I have seen in if you can imagine this, negotiating with ransomware attackers, and that they will provide a signed guarantee, by the way, that they won't attack you again within the next 12 months.
It's certified, right?
Yeah. Oh, you can trust them, right? I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, they are. So some other things that are happening in typical ransomware now is that it will attempt to attack the backups. So whatever connected backups there are, it's going to attempt to attack those. So make sure that passwords are not the same. You're not using the same admin password that you are for your backup. I mean, it seems like we shouldn't have to say that, but we do, right? And then that they offsite the data so that they can not only ransom the files that are encrypted locally, but then they'll threaten to release your client data to the dark web if you don't pay. So it's multifold, and that's, I mean, now that's pretty much standard in any variant of ransomware that comes out, is attack the backups and offsite the data.
So as an MSP, you just think worst case scenario for everything when they get hit, and plan from that point. Is that
yeah, I mean, that's what you have to plan for, and hopefully you've implemented a product like CryptoStopper so that it doesn't get to that point. And that's exactly why we created CryptoStopper, was so that people didn't have to worry about the going to backups was the first thing, but then also now the exfiltration and the offsiting of the data.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point too. When you brought that up, from my understanding, CryptoStopper detects and neutralizes active ransomware attacks. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yep. That's in
How does the
our
process work? I was going to say, if you could walk us through how that works.
Yep.
I'm not that familiar with these types of systems.
Yeah, so it's twofold. So the first thing, we deploy bait files that then our algorithm is watching those bait files that are scattered throughout the data, and that speeds our time to detection. But then we're also watching the native files in case, because there's, I mean, we assume, and we think we're still under the radar at this point, but at some point the attackers are going to try and fingerprint what we're doing and get around it. And these guys are using AI to take all of the best prevention solutions out there and try to create new ways. And so we have random deployment, and then we randomly select native files to be watching. And our algorithm is actually watching for that encryption process and then killing it.
Gotcha. I'm trying to think because I know I'm a big plane buff. I know you and I talk because you're a pilot. But I'm thinking like the fighter jet. I know they have like Air Force One has. What am I thinking of? It's the tracers. Yeah.
Yeah. The I can't think of what they're called either. Basically it's a missile that it shoots out to stop the other incoming missile.
It's like chatter. Yeah, the same thing with submarines, right? So it's a similar concept, right? You're trying to keep them away from the main target.
Yeah. Well, right. And if you can imagine, I mean, our product is that last line of defense. So, I mean, ransomware has gotten past everything else, and ransomware is now running on the network. And so that we're detecting that ransomware actually running and killing it. And there is a slight amount of collateral damage. I mean, we stop in less than a second, but even in that less than a second, typically it's somewhere between 5 and 10 files that are still hit, even stopping it in less than a second.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing though, when you think about what they can do in a second.
Well, right. And you think about, okay, if that ran for 10 minutes or 2 days, and a lot of times they'll schedule the ransomware so that it'll start on a Friday night or over a weekend. And so that people aren't actively in and wouldn't notice it until they come in Monday morning, and then everything is toast.
Yeah. So how did you come up with this idea, Greg? It sounds like a phenomenal, approach.
Yeah, actually one of our engineers in the backup company came up with it. Just we were talking about this was probably back in 2015 timeframe, talking about, okay, these ransomware, and we'd had a few of our MSP clients hit at that point. And we were just brainstorming ideas, just myself and 2 other engineers one day, brainstorming ideas, and came up with this PowerShell script, and worked really well. I mean, it took, on average, that was about 9 seconds to detection. So it was, I mean, a few hundred files would be hit at that point. And then just improved from there, and then actually built it into what is now CryptoStopper and a full-on product now.
Now you're making me think that if my internet's running slow, it's probably a good thing, because they'll be able to get less files away from me if I get.
Or maybe all your bandwidth is being sucked up by the exfiltration of the data.
That's probably more the. No, I have Time Warner. Believe me, it's the internet. But that's phenomenal. But I want to talk about something else too, is how it's affected the work. Is the pandemic obviously is one of the big game changers over the last year, and the resulting move to distributed workforce. How has that been impacted by ransomware?
So, I mean, it's made it easier for the ransomware attackers. So you can imagine, I mean, after the pandemic hit, basically everybody picked up if they had desktops even, they picked up the desktops and took them home, or took their laptops home, and then they're outside of the protections of at least the firewall on the inside, and the IT guys being right there, to now everyone working from home. It just made it easier for the attackers. And the stats that I've seen for 2020 is that there was a 7-fold increase of ransomware in 2020 alone. Now, there were some contributing factors besides the pandemic to that. There had been a big shift to crypto mining in the malware. And that really was in 2018 and into 2019. And then Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies collapsed, and crypto mining stopped, and they switched to ransomware. Now cryptocurrency went through, I mean, insane again. So I would expect crypto mining will become, start taking up time of the attackers, where they switch back. But I mean, just the people working from home made it so much easier because all of the protections weren't there.
That's a good point. We tend to be a little more relaxed. At least I do when I'm not in my office, as opposed to home too. But can imagine your point is you don't have an IT team around, you don't have supervisors. Really good reason to have, make sure they're stepping up cybersecurity training right now.
Yep.
Those remote employees, but
for sure.
Awesome. So how can MSPs up their game with ransomware to best protect their business clients?
Yeah. So, I mean, lots of ways. So, I mean, the first thing that I always recommend, even about, and I'm owning an anti-ransomware company, right? But the first thing I would recommend is get your patch management game under control, because that's the number one thing for not just for ransomware, but all kinds of malware and data breaches. So get patch management under control first of all, and then install CryptoStopper. So I mean, it's all about having that layered security stack, and I think all MSPs have to become MSSPs, because your clients are not going to stand for multiple ransomware or malware data breach that, you might get away with it once, but not more than once. So get the right protections in place and make CryptoStopper part of that security stack.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. A layered approach. I know even with your point about, MSSPs is even if they don't become one, they can leverage and work with them to fill in any gaps too. So that's always the nice part, is having a lot of collaboration partners available in the security space to build, and to layer, and to watch. I think that
absolutely
be the key part, right? Is looking to see when things don't look quite right.
Yeah, well, and so we've gone to a full security operations center with an EDR product, in addition to, so as part of our layered security, that EDR, CryptoStopper, managed AV, managed patch management. I mean, it's a whole suite of products that I know for MSPs is a pain to manage, but I mean, like we have a full-time person that's their job, is to manage the tools.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's getting that serious of a job to where it's not a part-time role anymore; it's a full-time role.
Absolutely.
Very good. Before we finish up here, too, Greg, what's the best way for people to learn more about CryptoStopper?
Yeah. So, well, first I want to talk about an event that we're sponsoring. To go check that out, we are sponsoring at GlueX a giveaway for a Jeep Gladiator. Bear Grylls is the keynote speaker, and it's an outdoor Southwestern theme. And as part of that, we're giving away, all you have to do is register for the event, and then you can sign up for the Jeep Gladiator, and that's May 4th and 5th. And beyond that, then you can find us at getcryptostopper.com, and people can email me directly to gedwards@getcryptostopper.com.
Just make sure they put the get at the beginning.
Get the get.
Get the get. Awesome. Well, before we sign off today, any final thoughts you'd like to share on ransomware or anything else in the cyber?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with ransomware is that it's not going away. I mean, it's been around since at least, well, before 2012, but really malware really has become ransomware now. I mean, there's hardly any malware attacks unless they're breach related that are not ransomware now. So when you think about all of those malware attacks that, one or two would slip through a year before, that's not acceptable anymore. And so upping the security game, full layered security that includes CryptoStopper, is my absolute recommendation for every MSP out there.
That makes sense. I guess if they're going to the effort to try to get through systems, you'd use your best tool to do it, right?
For sure. Yep.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Greg. On behalf of IOTA, I'd like to thank Greg Edwards from CryptoStopper for joining us today. Before we sign off, I'd also like to remind our listeners to subscribe to the Secure Connections podcast on Apple, Spotify, and other podcast platforms, or listen to past episodes on iota.com. We also recommend check back at our website. The iota.com website is all new, some great new resources, and some exciting news to come too. So check it out. Let us know, give us your feedback. We always like to hear from our audience. Thanks again for joining us today, and have a safe and secure day. Thank you.